man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will always bring forth. Gentlemen, today's video is arguably one of the most important temperamental reframing that you need to do in order to bring into your reality that which you would see cultivated, because otherwise you will forever follow this fate, this predetermined path in your mind that you are going to be the victim of life circumstance. And in many ways you are only the circumstance of your thoughts. So your life can be made or unmade by a consequence of what you bring in fruition in terms of you using this organ between your ears. Now, there is an interesting relationship, I believe, with what may be colloquially known as manifestation laws, magnetism laws, attraction laws, and our practices of, let's say, sexual restraint or sexual control and better jurisdiction and agency in relation to how we relate to our sexual dimension as men. Because this, in my opinion, I did a post a couple of days ago in respects to this relationship between SR and the benefits. And it is becoming increasingly more obvious as we begin to go down this path that the benefits are merely a consequence of an interoceptic change that happens inside the body, particularly in the mind and particularly in the energies in motion. And I'll explain this prerequisite is so important to understand if you are going to see fruits in your life. So please join me on this journey with As a Man Thinketh. If no useful seeds are put into fertile soil, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their own kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plots, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless and impure thoughts and cultivating towards perfecting the flowers and fruits of right, useful and pure thoughts. So, what's an interesting understanding to come to when we read that particular excerpt is that whatever we sow in the fertile soil of our subconscious mind has no choice. It has no choice but to come into reality by your will or not, by your intention or not. I preface this video. It is made or unmade by yourself. The mind doesn't know negative nor positive. It doesn't know good or bad. All it knows is attention and energy. Attention and energy on the subject matter of what you hold within is bound to come into being. Because when we put our skills of observation onto something, we in many ways start to construct this mental schema or this mental architecture of that physical thing. We are unknowingly creating, because that is the creative capacity of our soul. Let's keep going. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and of course destiny. This makes me think of a very famous quote by Lao Tzu, one of my favorite quotes, because I believe it perfectly and very concisely explains, delineates, and colors the premise of this particular chapter, which is watch your thoughts first and foremost. They become your words. Watch your words. They become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your character. Watch your character becomes your destiny. So on and so forth. So there is a clear relationship between your destiny and the thoughts that you hold within the grey. Thought and character are one. Thought and destiny are one. As character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously or unharmoniously related to his inner state. Again, there's no subjectivity here. There's no subjectivity on it. So if you find yourself before you're going to bed thinking, let's take the context in which is often brought up in this channel of relapse, of sexual degeneracy and licentiousness. Let's take, if your mind, a classic question I get is, Joseph, how can I prevent this, the prevalence of wet dreams in my life? And usually what will happen is that wet dreams are the consequence of what you hold in your mind before your conscious moves into subconscious, into unconscious. So if you find yourself before bed mulling over fantasy, indulging the impressions that have, beguiled your youth because you've been unconscious of it, then you'll find your mind doesn't discriminate in that regard. It will start to impress upon the subconscious mind fantasy, and then you find yourself dreaming about fantasy, and then you find your body relapsing to fantasy. So what you hold in your mind before you go to bed is very, very important. That's why I always journal and shed my inner dialogue, my inner monologue, via that mechanism through breath work and then through some kind of quiet meditation work. And then I consciously impress upon my mind that which I would like to see come into fruition. And here's the thing, because the classic rebuttal I get to this is, Joseph, why don't you have then a Lamborghini or a mansion and things like that? And the honest truth is, I have no real material desire for something like that. Strange, as you get older and older, you begin to recognize that material possessions, as much as they can give you a big dopaminergic hit, like when you buy some nice clothes, or you buy a new car, or you buy something to the equivocation of a milestone in your life, something you want to tick off your bucket list. Yeah, like one of the big things of ticking off my bucket list was, living by myself, right? And you're in ecstasy the first week or 2 weeks after that happens, but then it becomes normal. It's not that I'm not grateful for it, but you think these, and I think a home is certainly more valuable than the very superficial items that I kind of used as an example there. You think they will bring you joy, but the truth is they will not. So you find yourself actually trying to hold in your mind's eye that which would bring you more quality of life, such as, one of the big things I've been working on at the moment is social relationships and having more friends, and not just more friends, but more specifically, more individuals who are creatives in my immediate physical environment, because they impress upon you more creativity. So and also there's another sidebar to this, in that on some level, if you try to jump too far, it's kind of like trying to lift a very, very heavy weight in the gym. Your mind can only stretch so far. And that's not a consequence of the strength of the mind, more reference points of confirmation that what this is real. Meaning, the best thing to do is start very, very small. Maybe you've lost touch with somebody that you want to bring back into your life. And then once you have the evidence and proof in the pudding that you can do something like that, then you can start to stretch into the fields of something which has a little bit more value to you. But the trick you often play on yourselves is attachment, which is, the more something means to you, the more you begin to fall into a state of craving and not having. And because we recognize via the mirror principle that reality can only reflect that which you are, not which you want. So think about that. You only get what you are, not what you want. Then these things rarely come into fruition. So start off with something that you don't have too much affinity to, too much personal attachment to, and you'll find that the results typically come quicker. So This does not mean that a man's circumstance at any given time are indications of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself, that for the time being, they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him here. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of the law by which cannot err. That is just the truth. This is just as true as those feeling out of harmony with their surroundings as those who are contented by them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is, that he may learn, that he may grow. And as he learns the spiritual lesson, which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstance. So man is always buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is creative power, and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being, out of which circumstances grow, then, and only then, he becomes the rightful master of himself. So there is something practical I would like you to take from this, because as much as these mental models are going to serve us, then there can be no wisdom without the installation of them into practical application. So there is time. You should make time. You should make time for thinking. Think about how wild that is. You should take time for thinking. You should make a habit of thinking. And in that thinking, which is a conscious arrangement and conscious creativity of the thought process, then you start to flex these muscles. When is the last time? I mean, just take a moment, take a pause with me, take a breath. When is the last time you allowed yourself to daydream? You allowed yourself to think? And I don't mean consume. Because here's the thing, a lot of people avoid the thinking process because typically, as their mind is a survival mechanism, it usually reverts to that which threatens its present circumstances. So you start thinking about what could go wrong, right? Can I meet ends meet? What if my wife is cheating on me? You think about something that threatens your heart and your body and your circumstances first. That's why many people avoid it. That's why many people, instead of thinking, they allocate time which should be used for creativity to consuming, right? Consummation is something else. Consuming something that will stop the thought process going, because the thought process can be too over-encumbering in those moments, especially if you live a very neurotic life, because you don't want to deal with it. You want to put it away. You want to put on some trash TV or some trash YouTube. You need to allow yourself time for contemplation, for peace. When was the last time you just sat down or lay down on the floor? That's one of my favorite things to do, is just lay down on the floor. There's something very grounding and very anxiety mitigating by just lying your whole body down on the floor and allowing the pressure of the earth to push against your muscles and your bones. It's very, 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 very enjoyable. If you have the time out after this video, I invite you to do that. Maybe do that now and just leave me speaking. Just lie down on the floor. No music. And after this video ends, don't click another. Just stay there for 10-15 minutes. And force the thinking process to go beyond that which threatens your present circumstance. So no neurosis, no negative thoughts. And start to think creatively about what you would like to bring into fruition. What are you worthy of in this present circumstance? What have you been doing right? And as a consequence of the karmic debt that you are beginning to undo, should you bring into your environment? Because like attracts like. Energy attracts energy. But if you have no intention If you're not directing this energy into a particular place, then you'll find you have no jurisdiction about the outcomes and the circumstances and the character that you fundamentally become. Give yourself time to think. Give yourself time to think. That circumstances grow out of thought, every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification. That purification point is a nod to this notion of without vice, we have no guilt, we have no shame, we have no apathy, we have no lethargy. And once a man is void of these low and negative emotions, he finds that he can bring things into his immediate environment very easily, almost laughably easily. And that's where the benefits of SR come from. Think about it. Now you're living a life, let's say 1 week, let's say 2 weeks, let's say 3 weeks, and shame has not touched your heart. It has not poisoned your veins. Guilt is something that you have not entertained in a month's time. What does that do to your energy levels? What does that do to your mind? What does that do to your self-perception? What does that do to your opinion of yourself? You think it raises it? Of course it does. Of course it does. And then with that energetic abundance, then you use this. Use this mechanism between your ears and you create. And this is where I make the distinction. People often maybe misquote or perhaps don't understand what I mean by the point when I reference you can have a physical kind of intercourse and reproduce on the physical level to create another life, or you can have intercourse on the mental level and you can create in reality, on the psychic plane, on the energetic. So you're using the masculine principle as a means to create the story that you would wish to live. And that is the true benefits of SR. These are not theories, these are facts. Speak soon.